So we're going to kind of ease into it, you know, and ease into it means that it's not like there is a moment before the experience and a moment where suddenly, oh, we're going there, but kind of just checking. We're already in it. We're together. We're in it. And I'm inviting you to pay attention to what's happening inside as you're sitting and close to your screen, looking at a bunch of people here. You stopped whatever you were doing to come here. So just noticing what's happening inside, noticing how you're noticing it. You might be closing your eyes or not. You might be, more in a thinking mode. You might be directing your attention to your body. So just the moment of noticing how you're noticing it. I'm aware that even when I close my eyes, I'm aware of being part of a group. Just even if I close my eyes, don't look at the screen, don't look at all these faces here. There's a part of me that remembers we're doing this together. And so I'm inviting you to check in what way you're aware of not just being alone, looking inside, but being part of this group. And so that's a pause. What we're doing. We're just taking a pause from, whatever we were doing before, not starting something new. But as you notice, this pause is not like the pause when you pause a video where nothing happens. And when you start, it starts again the way exactly where you had stopped it. A lot happens in that pause. So, focusing is based on that pause. And actually, all meditative, contemplative practices are based on a pause, a special kind of pause, a mindful pause. So I call it active pause. For me, what I do is essentially the handle for what I do is active pause, that central role of what happens in this kind of moment, and all the things that happen there. And you know that if you're a focuser, it's nothing new. But I think also of active pause is not just what's under the focusing, but also under the experience of meditation. And so what we're going to be doing this morning is sharing an active pause. And I'm going to describe that. But just for a moment, inviting you to stay with that sense of all together. What we're embarking on is a moment where we're going to share that experience of an active pause. I'll tell you more about what we're going to do, but I'm just curious for a moment, inviting you to check what's happening before embarking that, just by mentioning that we're going to share an active pause, and notice where you are physically and emotionally. Is there a part of you that feels excited or a bit scared, or whatever other feelings might be happening? And just noticing that and noticing how you notice them. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is at some point, we're going to be doing some stuff here together to prepare. But at some point, we're going to go into a moment that's meditative-like, and I'm going to describe how to do it. And we're going to practice it before. And we're going to do that for 15 or 20 minutes. We're going to pay attention to body sensations. And after that, we're going to go into breakout rooms and share what happened. And again, I'm going to go into more detail about that. But so essentially, the sharing an active pause is going to include a moment where we are in that contemplative mode, noticing our body, paying attention to what happens in our body, and then we're going to be sharing it. So I want to give you a little bit of background for that, a sense of why and how it fits, because it's always easier to do something when you have a sense that it's not an arbitrary exercise, but there is this kind of a goal or some spirit behind it. Also, for some people, being in isolation, just going inside, and it can bring discomfort. So part of that concept of the sharing, the pause, is to introduce two notions. One is to introduce the notion that stillness is not the be all and end all. You actually want to pay attention to the movement within the stillness. And you can feel free to not have stillness if it doesn't feel right. And I want to introduce the notion of paying attention to what's happening inside. So often one reason that some people feel uncomfortable with meditation is the fact that you feel like you have to achieve something. You have to, be sitting still, not moving. You have to not have thoughts intruding, or you have to kind of push thoughts aside, so for some people it's wonderful. For some people it doesn't quite work. So here, what we're going to do is really very consciously paying attention to what happens in the body. And again, we're going to do a little practice before going into the meditation itself. So if it's unclear, it will probably be more clear in a few minutes. That sense of, not the not, okay? And it's much harder to not do something than to do something. So that's also why I don't use the word meditation, because the word meditation comes with a whole baggage and cultural expectations and of what it is. And I think of it in terms of active pause. So active pause is a way to redirect attention. And, attention is something that's it's a function, is how we are. As human beings, as living beings, as animals, we evolved to shift our attention to whatever needs attention. Okay, so being without attention is very difficult. It goes counter the way we function. So the idea is actually to very much be engaged. And that's what my definition of mindfulness is: mindful engagement, using the social engagement circuit of our nervous system and directing the attention in a different place, and directing the attention to the way the body is functioning moment by moment. Okay, so much of the time we're in our heads. And I don't mean in any way to put that down. We function in the world because a lot of what we do is we need to be in our head, or we need to be in a, in just the doing, okay, and not so much paying attention to what's happening inside. So it's an active pause because we do something that's different. We shift the attention downward, from up in the head or the thoughts down to the body. And so traditional instructions for meditation are when you see a thought, oh, it's just like a cloud, and you either kind of gently push it, or even better, you observe it in a gentle way, waiting for it to go. So in a body-oriented approach, thoughts are not just thoughts that are abstract. Thoughts are related to our body function. The whole idea of why focusing exists is because we're animals. We're embodied creatures. We're not just brains or minds, and thoughts are actually manifestations. Felt sense is a manifestation of the physical experience of your whole body responding to the situation in some way that is, sometimes very subtle. Okay. So what we're doing here is not having no thoughts, but directing the attention to the body. And one way to direct the attention to the body is to have some curiosity about specifics. Okay, so it includes, how is my breath going? Very similar to typical meditation approaches. But it can also be, how's my spine doing? Okay, and actually we're going to do a few moments of that experience, and I'm going to lead you into that, to try it for a couple of minutes. Okay, so be comfortably seated, just a sense of feeling your butt on the chair. And, you might have a sense of performance about it. Are you doing all right or not? But don't worry too much about whether you're doing right. Okay, essentially you sit down, and then as you sit, you feel that your spine is connected to the root of the spine on the butt, and coming all the way up. And then I'm inviting you to put your fingers in kind of a tent. So I'm demonstrating it on my little postage stamp thing. So, just like the fingers are touching each other, and at the bottom, the thumbs are touching each other. Okay, yeah. So you have kind of you create a little triangle. Okay. And now you're going to move your fingers and hands down toward the area of your belly. And as you're doing this, you're going to kind of gently push your fingers. Okay. And what you will probably notice, be curious about what you notice, but for what I am noticing when I push my fingers together is it helps my spine go up a little higher. It may or may not be noticeable, but inside it feels like a lot. And I feel like my shoulders are expanding a bit. I'm kind of sitting straighter. But essentially, what's happening is, as I am pushing with my fingers, I'm noticing something happening in my body. Okay, so I'm just inviting you to stay a minute or two doing that. And it's not about forcing staying it's not about the stillness of it, but it's just about noticing all the things that can happen within a minute or two. And shifting into the mode of being curious about what happens in the body. Noticing how the breath changes. Okay, so kind of gently ease out of this. Maybe Lynn, since you had brought up the question, you notice that sense of how that shifting of attention as opposed to no attention. Just curious what it's like for you.
Yes, that feels it feels comforting in a way, like that feeling. If I'm not saying don't pay attention to my thoughts, but a kind of coming home to myself. And this, I like the feeling of that, feels like a quieting. So it's not like the feeling that I have to stay in a mindless state, but that I'm quieting my mind and bringing myself in somehow.
Wow. So I want to repeat what I remember of it. It felt really beautiful. So that sense, there's a calming quality to it, a comforting quality to it, and the sense that it's not trying to not do something, but I think you said coming home to myself, which I felt very moving to do. So that's what we're trying to do. That sense of this is not a place where you have to do something that's unnatural and it feels unnatural to you and difficult, but a sense that there is a gentle, friendly, inviting quality, invitation to come home to yourself. And the coming home to yourself is not that, say, thoughts are bad and feelings are good or sensing is good, but that thoughts are great, but sensing is also a big part of yourself. So it is how to get back, how to come home to the whole of yourself. Okay. And that's what this is about. And so what I also want to say is that unfortunately, when we go home to ourselves this way, sometimes what we encounter is very uncomfortable. So it's not necessarily that it's going to give you an experience of bliss. For instance, what happens is when you direct attention to the body, you suddenly discover aches and pains that you were not aware of before. Okay, not to mention emotional pain that comes back. So it is part of the territory. And the idea is to have enough of a container for that to be okay. Okay. And so that's also why we have another part to this, which is going to be the sharing. Okay. So we're going to do something like this for a longer period of time, and then we're going to share in dyads. And there's two reasons for the sharing. One of them is that it helps you go a little deeper into whatever comes up. Okay, and that's nice to talk about it with somebody else and to not feel alone with it. Okay, and so if, for instance, the experience of being in silence during the meditative time is difficult for you, you keep remembering that there's going to be a reward for it afterwards. You're going to share. So you're not alone, you're not abandoned. You're having something and you're going to reconnect. So it's a big part.
When you said go deeper, what is the deeper if we aren't attending to the content? It wouldn't be going deeper into my feelings about what happened before this meeting, which is very in my body. But the deep would be what, just say a little bit more about what the deeper is, since it's a different deeper than focusing. The focusing deeper would be, oh, it's like this that I'm feeling. And there's that word and that image that goes. And this is a different deeper, I think.
Yeah, no, beautiful. It's a wonderful question. What is deeper and what is, in what way is it? So yes, in focusing, that felt sense is the entry point for the processing. And this is an active pause. So we're at the pause part of focusing. And so the same way as in focusing, we don't rush to conclusions. We don't say, oh yeah, boom, this, and you say, okay, yeah, stay a little bit with it a little longer, see what's it. The appearances it appears to be that, but let's be a little more curious about it. So we extend that. And so if the active pause that we do here is 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you have that sense of, oh, this needs attending, and I will attend to it. Including at the end of this moment, I will talk to somebody about it. And then I have the firm commitment to myself that I will attend to it more. But right now, I'm giving it that pause in order to hear more from it. Okay? So it's kind of stretching that moment where in focusing, we take a little pause, and extending it. And so noticing, yeah, this needs attention, absolutely. But I want to hear more about the way it is manifesting right now. And I want to go into that physical embodied experience of how it's happening in my body. And so that's why I wanted to say, please feel free when we do that meditative moment to actually move a little bit or twitch or whatever. It goes against the instructions for regular meditation. But here we're paying attention to the inner experience of movement, okay, the physicality. So if you need it, do something.
Let me make sure that I got that right. There is something to be attended to later. But what I'm doing is I'm sort of marking that in my mind, but I'm staying with the physicality of my body and prolonging that before I would later on go further with the it.
Yeah, yeah. And at the same time as you say that, I deeply appreciate it and want to tweak a little bit, okay? Because in listening to what you said, one might conclude that what it is simply kind of noting it down, making a bookmark for something to come back later. Actually, what this is a deep faith that the staying with it is a kind of processing. Okay, is an implicit, unconscious if you want, but I prefer the word implicit, but that by simply staying with it and being curious about the physicality of it, there is a processing that is taking place inside. So it's not just I'm making a mental note that, oh yeah, I had this thing and I want to later process it. But by staying with it, I am processing it in a different way that will make my conscious process richer later.
Would you consider it a form of listening, like listening? Does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially you are listening to what's happening inside, sensing, listening, you know? And so the experience in focuser when you're listening is very active. It's not just, oh, you know, I happen to be a tape recorder. So let's do it. Okay. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it for 12 minutes. Okay. And then we'll come back into dyads. So I'm sure that as we start in doing it, there's many of you who are going to feel, am I doing it right? Did I get the right instructions? Oh, there's this question I didn't think about asking. And this is really part of the process. So don't worry too much about whatever you're doing. Is you're doing it right? What you're doing is noticing what you're doing and essentially redirecting your attention whenever it wanders just in thoughts into, oh, what's happening in my body? How is my breath going? How is my spine? Where is it twitching? If you have a thought, just remembering that the thought is, what's the physicality behind that thought? Or what does it feel like to be drawn to thoughts? And what happens if I try to direct my attention to the breathing? Am I coming down? So you're experimenting, okay? And there's not just one way to do it, it's over time. So if you do this over time, it will get richer. It's not about performing it the right way, okay? So again, I want to invite you to be firmly seated, noticing and putting your arms, your hands into that little tent, and then moving the arms and the hands toward the belly, a gentle pressure on the hands. And so what the gentle pressure on the hands does is it kind of reminds you have a body. So for instance, when you find your mind wandering, pressing your fingers a little bit more toward each other is going to kind of bring your attention down, okay? Again, is the idea how to shift attention. You have something to do is that it helps you kind of bring it down. I suggest you close your eyes and we're going to go into our 12 minutes.